She was brutally betrayed by her most trusted colleagues and aggressively introduced to the pavement by a massive truck. However, instead of dying, she snaps awake inside the body of a famously wicked queen, fated to be murdered by her own trusted confidants. Refusing to accept a second doomed ending, she uses her cutthroat corporate survival skills to completely break the original plot. When a treacherous noble proudly admits to attempting her assassination, she uses her absolute authority to casually rewrite his destiny, leaving the entire kingdom staring at her in utter shock. An evening shadow falls as our girl finds herself face to face with a hooded assassin. She questions his motives, but instead of offering a villainous monologue, he responds by plunging a knife directly into her stomach. He casually drops the weapon on the ground like it is a piece of trash, leaving her freezing in shock. As her life flashes before her eyes, she realizes this is the ultimate betrayal. The scene transitions into the lore of a story known as Palace of Glory and Betrayal. This tale follows a government official turned famous detective trying to solve a massive palace mystery. At the center of it all is the villainous Queen Lavinia. She started off capable and beloved by her people, but somewhere along the way, she shifted into a tyrant imposing brutal politics. The body count rose, public satisfaction plummeted, and eventually, she was assassinated by someone deep in her inner circle. The juicy part is that the novel never actually revealed the culprit. Drawing parallels, our girl reflects on how her own life mirrors the doomed queen. She had built a company from the ground up with her colleagues, riding high on early success. But tragedy struck when she completely failed to notice a fake contract right under her nose. Her most trusted subordinate staged a corporate takeover, gleefully bragging about teaming up to steal her hard work. Boiling with frustration, she questions where it all went wrong and wonders if understanding her team better could have prevented this backstabbing disaster. Before she can fully process her corporate trauma, a massive truck comes hurtling out of nowhere and aggressively introduces her to the pavement. Suddenly, she snaps awake, realizing her soul has been abruptly relocated into the body of the infamous queen. She barely has a second to process her new royal status before finding herself cornered by two imposing men. They accuse her of corrupting the nation and proudly announce her impending doom. She frantically tries to figure out what in the world is happening as one of the attackers winds up for a lethal strike. She braces for an impact that never comes. Right on cue, a handsome subordinate bursts onto the scene, offering a smooth apology for his tardiness while checking if she is unharmed. The remaining attacker recognizes the newcomer as the Black Knight Duke Paul Dean, but before he can even finish his sentence, the Duke swiftly sends him to the afterlife with a single brutal strike. Our girl stares at the fresh carnage, severely questioning reality. The Duke approaches smoothly, drops to one knee, and formally apologizes for arriving late to her crisis. She is too stunned to speak. The Duke zeroes in on a tiny cut on her arm, instantly escalating the situation to a medical emergency. Declaring that he must summon a physician immediately, he scoops her effortlessly into his arms. While being cradled like a priceless artifact, our girl connects the dots. She remembers this specific assassination attempt from the novel, confirming she has indeed been transmigrated into the Villainess. Panic sets in as she realizes she might be destined to die a second time. According to the original plot, the queen is scheduled to be murdered by a trusted confidant the night before she announces her royal consort. Unaware of her internal crisis, the Duke stares at her with absolute devotion and solemnly vows to protect her from death. She instantly dismisses his heroic pledge as a total lie, convinced the plot armor is severely against her. Just as they prepare to make their dramatic exit, a commotion breaks out. A fiery red-haired man is pinned to the ground by two guards, screaming at the top of his lungs about delivering divine punishment to the wicked queen. Our girl stares down the mastermind behind her assassination attempt. It turns out to be the Marquis, who loudly demands the Duke hand over the vixen, declaring that she is a toxic presence bringing only harm to the nation. The Duke glares right back, dropping the dramatic bombshell that the Marquis is actually his brother-in-law. Showing absolutely zero family loyalty, the Duke furiously brands him a traitor for pointing a blade at Her Majesty and orders the guards to throw him in prison until his trial. The guards happily comply, dragging him away while he angrily yells that the Duke will severely regret this. Completely unfazed by his relative's dramatic exit, the Duke smoothly turns to our girl and suggests they leave. Meanwhile, our girl is internally screaming, severely questioning what fresh disaster is going to hit her next. A few days later, the Marquis is put on trial for his treasonous life choices. Our girl manages to calm her racing heart, mentally channeling the endless, mind-numbing civil trials she sat through back in her past life as a company president. She knows she just needs to survive this courtroom drama. The head judge kicks things off, sternly asking if the Marquis admits to ordering the hit on the Queen. The Marquis proudly owns up to it, boldly declaring that the Western Territory is starving and drowning in taxes. Since the Queen completely abandoned them, he decided to personally deliver a very sharp, pointy brand of justice. Listening to his heroic speech, our girl pieces together his character from the novel. She remembers the Marquis was a man so overflowing with justice that it became an actual hazard. He had begged the original Lavinia for help, got completely ghosted, and decided murder was the only logical next step. In the original plot, Lavinia ruthlessly executed him and his entire clan without batting an eye. This total massacre included his wife, who just so happened to be the Duke's sister. Naturally, having your entire family slaughtered by your boss kind of kills the workplace morale, which caused the Duke to harbor a massive grudge and ultimately made him the prime suspect for Lavinia's future murder. Back in reality, the Marquis is still running his mouth, proudly stating that a queen who abandons her people is pure evil. The courtroom peanut gallery instantly starts gossiping, completely agreeing that the queen is useless, neglects the West, and proves that a female monarch is a terrible idea. Hearing the entire room openly roast her, our girl realizes she literally has zero allies. The novel dictated that she would die a miserable, lonely death, but she absolutely refuses to let her subscription to Life get cancelled like that. Cutting through the chatter, the judge sentences the Marquis to death and asks the Duke, acting as defense counsel, if he has any objections. The Duke violently clenches his fist. Fighting a massive internal battle, he decides his duty as the royal guardian overrides his family tree and firmly states he has no objections to his brother-in-law getting permanently deleted. Realizing that letting the Marquis die will instantly lock her back into the villainous route, our girl loudly objects to the sentence. Sparing his life, she uses her absolute authority to completely rewrite his fate. She appoints him as the Reconstruction Officer of the Western Territory, drops a massive 5-year tax exemption on the famine-struck areas, and casually orders him to fix the entire region. The Marquis looks at her like she just grew a second head, but quickly scrambles to agree, promising he will make it happen. Extremely satisfied with her quick thinking, our girl declares the case closed, prompting the judge to officially adjourn the court. As the room empties out, the crowd and the Duke are left standing there, staring in utter shock at the fact that the Wicked Queen just solved a national crisis with basic empathy. Later, our girl collapses in her room, completely drained of her will to live. She decides being a monarch is infinitely more exhausting than surviving back-to-back corporate meetings, but finds comfort in knowing she is successfully changing her doomed ending. Her brief moment of peace is interrupted when the Duke enters the room. He bows deeply, completely overflowing with gratitude, and thanks her for saving his brother-in-law's life. He vows to remember this massive favor for the rest of his life. Our girl quickly deflects, acting like it was no big deal, while internally sweating over the fact that she literally only did it to save her own neck. The Duke romantically adds that her judgment did not just save his family, but it also saved his heart. Just as she is starting to relax, our girl's eyes lock onto a very familiar, very sharp dagger. Her panic instantly reboots as she remembers a terrifying detail from the novel. The weapon used to eventually murder Lavinia was a dagger left at the crime scene, which was a specific dagger that Lavinia had gifted to the Duke to celebrate his promotion. Staring at the potential murder weapon, she realizes her fiercely loyal knight might still be her future assassin. Acting on pure survival instinct, she bluntly informs the Duke that she is considering firing him from his royal guard duties. He looks completely derailed by the sudden HR violation and frantically asks why. She straight up tells him there is a solid chance he might betray her just like the Marquis did. Desperate to prove his loyalty, the Duke grabs her hand, passionately vows that he will never betray her, and seals the dramatic promise with a deeply intense kiss to her hand. The Duke doubles down, practically begging to stay by her side. Our girl stares at him, mentally calculating if his intense puppy dog eyes are currently masking deep-seated murderous intent. Knowing she has to unmask her future killer to avoid a second funeral, she flashes him a perfectly diplomatic smile and orders him to prep her return to the bureaucratic nightmare of government work starting tomorrow. He obediently bows and takes his leave, leaving her to silently vow that she will figure out if he is her ultimate savior or her walking doom. Fast forward, and our girl is buried under a massive mountain of paperwork at her desk, realizing that ruling a kingdom is basically just extreme office administration. The Duke interrupts her misery to gently ask if she remembers what day it is. Drawing a complete blank, she asks what she missed, only for him to politely remind her that tonight is literally her own birthday ball. The scene shifts to the grand ballroom, which is completely packed with high society nobles who immediately start aggressively whispering the second she enters with the Duke. They mutter about how terrifyingly beautiful she is, acting like making eye contact with her will instantly send them to the afterlife. Our girl takes this in stride, fully aware that being the star of her own villainous birthday party comes with a healthy dose of public terror. The Duke smoothly tells her to ignore the haters, romantically comparing her to the sun and noting that everyone rightfully fears its power. She mentally points out that her son is canonically fated to set in a pool of blood, but verbally assures him she is completely unbothered. Going full guard dog, the Duke glares menacingly at the crowd and loudly declares he will absolutely not forgive anyone who hurts her. Our girl notes that his overprotective switch has been permanently flipped on since the trial, which is great for survival, but heavily overwhelming for her personal space. Retreating to a quiet corner to sip some wine, she mentally reviews her 5-star lineup of potential murderers. Suspect number 1 is Chancellor David Dior, a political mastermind who excels at manipulation and finds her extremely annoying to deal with. Suspect 2 is the court jester, a former foreign assassin turned personal intelligence agent, who is basically a walking wildcard that could betray her at any given second. Suspect 3 is the tribal king, a violently ambitious man who united the tribes and spends his free time fantasizing about slitting her throat. Suspect 4 is her actual younger brother Noah, a massive playboy whom Lavinia aggressively stripped of all royal privileges so he could never touch the throne. And rounding out the list is her very own Black Knight, the Duke, whose canonical motive was his family getting slaughtered. She remembers a frustrated interview where the original author casually dropped that all 5 men had solid motives, but none were the absolute deciding factor. This means there is a massive hidden puzzle piece she still needs to find to dodge her death flag, and she severely wonders which problem child she should investigate first. Right on cue, the Chancellor slides into her personal space, wearing a flawlessly polite smile as he offers his heartfelt birthday wishes. He smoothly pivots to mentioning the recent assassination attempt, claiming he was incredibly worried about her. Our girl internally rolls her eyes into another dimension, highly doubting the snake actually cared. Before she can verbally spar with him, a butler suddenly snaps, pulls out a knife, and launches himself at her while screaming for her to die. Without missing a beat, the Duke intercepts the attacker with a brutal kick to the stomach. He pins the guy to the floor and casually draws his own blade to instantly cancel the butler's subscription to life. Our girl shrieks for him to stop, halting the execution with mere milliseconds to spare before the guards rush in to drag the would-be assassin away. The Duke instantly checks if she is unharmed. She confirms she is fine thanks to his reflexes, but her internal alarm bells are absolutely deafening over his complete lack of hesitation to commit casual murder. Deciding to test his unhinged loyalty, she asks if he would truly obey any command she gives, even if she ordered him to die. Without blinking, he stares directly into her soul and promises he would gladly offer up his life if she asked, simply because he believes her word is absolute law. She smiles slightly, acutely aware that any normal woman would sprint away from this giant walking red flag, but she genuinely wonders how far she can push his devotion. Her thoughts are interrupted when she spots a tiny scratch on the back of his hand from the scuffle. The Duke tries to brush it off as nothing, but she immediately scolds him, insisting he needs to get it treated properly. The Duke looks completely blue-screened by the fact that she actually cares about his well-being. Meanwhile, the Chancellor watches this entire oddly domestic exchange with an incredibly entertained smirk. He steps back into the conversation, casually asking if she has considered their previous discussion. Our girl plays entirely dumb, asking what on earth he is talking about. The Chancellor chuckles, noting that playing innocent is quite cruel when they are supposed to be discussing their impending marriage. The Chancellor officially drops the marriage bomb, leaving our girl internally rebooting from the sheer audacity. Beside her, the Duke practically burns a hole into the Chancellor's skull with a completely lethal side-eye, while the ballroom crowd instantly launches into an aggressive whispering campaign. Sensing the room is entirely too loud for an impromptu wedding planning session, the Chancellor smoothly suggests they reschedule their chat. Our girl's internal warning sirens are blaring at maximum volume, completely terrified of whatever verbal contract the original queen might have accidentally agreed to. She mentally locks down her defenses, slaps on a painfully fake smile, and acts like she is looking forward to it, fully aware that surviving this palace means trusting absolutely nobody. Fast forward to a private garden tea party, where the Chancellor treats his marriage pitch exactly like a corporate merger. He breaks down the logistics, explaining that she is the glittering symbol of high society, and he is the political heavyweight who runs the nation. Joining forces would simply be a massive win-win for both of their careers. Our girl sips her tea, forced to admit that his business logic is incredibly solid. However, the novel's tragic lore suddenly floods her brain. The original Lavinia actually fell for this exact pitch, deeply trusting his shiny promise of lifelong protection. But the second the rings were on, the Chancellor went completely rogue. He started aggressively passing laws behind her back, loudly claiming to everyone that he had her royal seal of approval. When the original queen confronted him for treating her like a glorified rubber stamp, he basically told her to sit down, hand over her authority, and let him run the country. Realizing she was nothing but a political stepping stone, Lavinia furiously forced a divorce. The split completely tanked the Chancellor's standing in the political world, leaving him drowning in a massive pool of hatred for his former wife. Back in the present, the Chancellor stands up and leans in entirely too close, invading her personal space to promise that if he becomes her consort, he will personally crush any political complaints against her. Knowing exactly how this scam ends, our girl decides to completely derail his ambitions, hoping to shake loose some clues about her future murder. Flashing a dangerously polite smile, she casually drops a nuke on his ego, sweetly informing him that he is simply not enough of a man to be her husband. The Chancellor looks like his brain just hit a severe system error. He scrambles to ask exactly how he is lacking. Reaching out to tap him under the chin like a disappointed teacher, she explains that her husband needs to be the absolute pinnacle of capability and trust, and currently, he He does not even make the podium. The Chancellor jerks back, bitterly listing off her other heavily armed options like the Duke or the Tribal King, before desperately asking what he needs to do to win her undivided attention. Pivoting seamlessly into interrogation mode, our girl casually brings up the recent assassination attempt at her party, specifically noting how incredibly unfazed he seemed during the chaos. Playing the innocent card, he credits his calm demeanor to his past military service. Our girl mentally files that terrifying fun fact away. If he has military stealth training, he is more than capable of sneaking into her bedroom and introducing her to a fatal dagger. Trying to salvage his romantic momentum, he grabs her hand, swears to personally hunt down any clues about the culprit, and dramatically kisses her knuckles before strutting away. Left alone, our girl physically shudders, hoping the original queen's ghost is enjoying that brutal rejection, while severely questioning if anyone in this entire kingdom is actually sane. Meanwhile, the Chancellor retreats to his office, heavily annoyed that his flawless proposal got thrown out the window. When his lackey asks for the next play, the Chancellor declares he will manipulate the citizens who love the queen to systematically corner her into marriage. The lackey cautiously asks what happens if she still refuses. Flashing a smile that looks like it was constructed purely from bad intentions, the Chancellor drops his polite facade and vows to take her by force. Oblivious to her newly upgraded stalker, our girl heads outside and spots the Duke standing guard like a very handsome, completely frozen statue. She asks if he has been waiting there this entire time, and he seriously confirms he was just securing the perimeter for her safety. Reaching out, she touches his freezing face, absolutely shocked to realize he has been standing out there since the afternoon. He stares intensely into her eyes, completely dismissing the freezing temperatures as irrelevant. She severely wonders why he is going to such extreme lengths just because she saved his in-laws. Even though he might theoretically be the one to end her life later with his shiny dagger, she decides to blindly trust his unhinged loyalty for now. Flashing him a warm smile, she tells him to follow her, noting she has a very specific favor to ask. Our girl leads the Duke to a small table, sitting down for a private chat. She leans in and seriously asks him to investigate the Chancellor's background, dropping the heavy manipulation tactic that he is literally the only person she can trust with this task. The Duke looks momentarily stunned that she would entrust him with something so huge, but he immediately snaps into action. He passionately vows to take full responsibility, promising to ruthlessly tear through the Chancellor's entire life, from his official paperwork down to his most private secrets, searching for anything remotely suspicious. Our girl is a little taken aback by his intense dedication, but sincerely thanks him. As he flashes a bright, happy smile, she mentally notes that he is like a completely different person when he is not actively trying to end someone's life. The scene shifts back to the royal office, where one of the palace employees finishes giving a report. Our girl sincerely thanks him, stating that his explanation made things very clear. The entire room of employees looks completely shocked that the famously wicked queen actually expressed basic gratitude. Our girl internally reflects on the novel's lore, recalling that the original Lavinia let paranoia consume her. After being betrayed once, she treated literally everyone like a hostile enemy. Our girl realizes that while there are definitely people out to get her, the regular palace staff genuinely do good work. As she takes the paperwork, she formally tells them she is relying on all of them. Her mental priority list is clear. Step 1 is to surround herself with capable people she can actually trust. Then her eyes land on the Chancellor, who is casually lounging in the office. She glares at him, deeply questioning why he is even breathing the same air as her. He spots her unhappy expression and smoothly asks if she is upset that he is there. She dryly asks why she would be, and he points out that her annoyance is loudly written all over her face. She looks away, choosing not to grace that with a response. The Chancellor then smoothly justifies his presence, noting that since she was recently injured, it is only natural for him, as the Chancellor, to physically support her. Our girl begrudgingly admits that makes sense. The employees start whispering in awe as they watch the two of them work. Despite their obvious tension, they are both blasting through paperwork at terrifying speeds. Even our girl has to mentally admit that having the Chancellor around makes the workflow significantly smoother. Seizing the opportunity to flex his competence, the Chancellor leans in entirely too close and arrogantly tells her he needs her to recognize that he is more capable than anyone else, heavily implying he wants her to recognize his worth as her future husband. Our girl simply looks away and tells him to do whatever he wants. Suddenly remembering a previous gift, she asks him about a massive bouquet of flowers he had sent. He plays it off as a small token, but then smoothly offers to prepare an even more extravagant gift next time. He also casually mentions he could lend her some of his excellent personnel to help with the workload. Our girl expertly dodges the trap, coolly stating she will just accept the sentiment and nothing more. She mentally calculates that accepting his subordinates would basically mean inviting a bunch of highly trained spies into her office, and she absolutely cannot afford to owe a massive favor to her potential murderer. Taking the hint, the Chancellor formally excuses himself and leaves. As soon as the door clicks shut, the atmosphere in the room instantly lifts, and the employees happily get back to working alongside our girl. Meanwhile, The Chancellor is internally throwing a tiny tantrum. He thinks to himself that since he went out of his way to make time for her, the absolute least she could do is act a little happier to see him. As he walks down the hall, he spots the Duke standing guard outside. The Chancellor smirks and mockingly thanks the Duke for waiting for him. The Duke flatly responds that he was absolutely not doing that. The Chancellor ignores him, smoothly noting that the Duke is as quiet and unreadable as ever, which is exactly why Her Majesty likes him so much. He also points out that the Duke seems to be in a weirdly good mood today. The Duke just smirks to himself, internally agreeing that he is actually feeling pretty great. The Chancellor sarcastically thanks him for the little chat and walks away, leaving the Duke standing there in silence. Back in the office, the Duke enters the room to find our girl happily munching on snacks. She looks up, mildly embarrassed, and quickly explains she is using the Pomodoro technique, claiming that taking proper snack breaks severely boosts efficiency. She offers him a biscuit, and the Duke accepts it, looking deeply honored by the baked good. Later, our girl casually asks one of her employees why the Chancellor is constantly lingering around her office like a lost, heavily armed puppy. The employee looks at her like it is incredibly obvious, explaining that the Chancellor desperately wants the position of royal consort. He notes that the entire political world is basically shaking with anticipation over who will win the royal lottery and produce an heir. Everyone is violently curious about who will secure the seat next to Her Majesty. Our girl asks if the consort position is really that big of a deal, and the employee basically confirms it is the most highly contested prize in the kingdom. Our girl mentally processes this, realizing the situation is basically a high-stakes, reverse harem with a massive side of impending death. In the original story, after divorcing the Chancellor, Lavinia tried to take a new consort, but she was brutally murdered the night before the official announcement. This means the consort announcement is the literal deadline for her life. For now, everything feels surprisingly peaceful, and she sincerely wishes it could just stay this way. Unfortunately, the universe hates her. The scene shifts to a dark, shadowy room where an unknown figure violently smashes the glass case of a jewel. The figure aggressively clenches the stolen gem in their fist, furiously declaring they will not forgive the queen and vowing to get absolute revenge. Our girl stands in the middle of the treasure vault, confirming with the Duke that this is exactly where the heavily guarded national artifact was stolen. The Duke explains that the vault only hosts exhibitions twice a year during spring and autumn. Since it is currently closed off to the public with strictly limited access, this was definitely an inside job. He hands her a dramatic little piece of paper left at the crime scene. The note smugly thanks them for their sloppy security, brags about stealing the Tears of Dawn, and aggressively calls the queen trash who ignores her rotting kingdom and has absolutely no right to sit on the throne. Our girl stares at the insulting paper, utterly baffled that someone stole a priceless artifact just to be a dedicated hater. She mentally flips through the novel's plot, recalling that the original queen threw a massive tantrum over this exact incident and blindly interrogated half the palace. Wondering if the security actually was a complete joke, she asks the Duke. He fiercely defends the vault's honor, explaining that it is under intense lockdown and only highly specialized officials are allowed inside. He notes they already have 3 prime suspects and actual physical evidence, making it a perfectly contained mystery. The Duke casually adds that a crime like this would be impossible for anyone involved in management, with the sole exception of the single most dangerous person in the entire palace. Right on cue, the Chancellor strolls into the room, smoothly agreeing with the investigation team's report and offering a polite greeting. Our girl asks who this mysteriously dangerous person is, and the Chancellor smirks, noting it is the person she knows best. Before she can process that puzzle, a loud commotion breaks out. A blonde man bursts onto the scene, loudly arguing with the guards that he just wants to take a quick look around. A guard tries to grab him, but the blonde man suddenly glares, acting incredibly high and mighty as he warns the guard that carelessly touching him is a fantastic way to invite disaster. He makes a lightning-fast slashing motion. The guard instantly freezes, completely terrified that his throat has just been sliced open. A second later, the blonde man bursts into laughter, revealing he just used a bit of glue for a magic trick. He casually adds that next time, he might actually commit a murder, before cheerfully declaring that Her Majesty is the only one allowed to touch him without permission. Without a single ounce of hesitation, he closes the distance and wraps our girl in a massive hug. Our girl completely short-circuits, her face heating up as she realizes this is the court jester, who secretly doubles as Lavinia's personal intelligence agent. She severely wonders if the original queen was secretly dating her spies. Her romantic panic is abruptly cancelled when the Duke violently grabs the jester by the back of the neck. Radiating absolute murderous intent, the Duke glares at him and orders him to unhand the queen. The jester aggressively gasps for air, dramatically begging our girl for a rescue before the Duke permanently disconnects his head from his spine. Deciding she needs her intelligence agent alive, our girl orders the Duke to drop him. The Duke aggressively sighs and lets go, but 2 guards instantly secure the jester's arms. The Chancellor steps up, pointing out that an elite intelligence agent could easily bypass any vault security. He lists the jester's long history of causing chaotic incidents around the palace just for fun, officially crowning him the prime suspect. The jester wildly protests, insisting that officially he is simply a humble entertainer who does magic tricks and plays music to lighten the mood. He heavily stresses that he is definitely not the culprit this time. The Chancellor and the Duke immediately latch onto the highly suspicious phrasing of his defense and order the guards to throw him in a cell to extract the details. As he is being dragged away, the jester somehow completely slips out of their grip like a heavily armed eel and instantly wraps our girl in a desperate back hug. He whines about his impending jail time. Our girl just smiles, mentally noting that he is exactly as chaotic as his novel counterpart. She calculates that if this man actually is her future murderer, it just means the original queen totally failed to keep him on a tight leash. The jester practically cries, begging for her help and firmly insisting he is innocent. Fully leaning into the drama, our girl hugs him right back and loudly declares that she actually believes him, confidently promising to personally clear his name. Following her bold declaration to blindly prove the jester's innocence, the Duke and the Chancellor look like they just suffered simultaneous brain glitches. Meanwhile, our girl is having a massive internal panic attack. She realizes she just confidently promised to solve a major crime despite having zero actual detective experience and absolutely no idea if her chaotic intelligence agent is even innocent. Faking it until she makes it, she orders them to show her the way so she can officially interrogate the suspects. The interrogation kicks off with suspect number 1, an overseer named Colette. When the Duke demands an alibi, she politely claims she was innocently organizing paperwork in her room. Next up is suspect number 2, another overseer named Annie, who smugly declares she was probably just sleeping. Finally, suspect number 3, the chief supervisor Julian, initially stays completely silent before nervously admitting she had sneaked out into town to grab some drinks. She immediately backpedals, awkwardly looking away and violently insisting it is not a regular habit. Our girl mentally notes that absolutely none of them have a verifiable alibi. She points out to the Duke that any of these 3 women could easily be the thief. Refusing to hit a dead end, she dramatically slams her hands on the table and orders everyone back to the crime scene. Back at the vault, the Duke drops another massive investigative headache. He explains that they found personal items belonging to all 3 suspects scattered right at the scene. They recovered Colette's pen, Annie's earring, and Julian's pocket watch. This means either one of them dropped their item while committing the robbery, or someone purposely planted an entire lost and found bin to frame them. Our girl's brain feels like a Windows update stuck at 99%, realizing there is zero logical way to narrow this down just yet. Later, she is sitting alone at her desk when the jester magically appears in her personal space. He casually asks if she has figured out the culprit, to which she quietly admits she is still thinking. He cheerfully suggests the case is headed for a total dead end and the treasure is gone forever. Trying to assert some royal authority, our girl puts on her absolute most intimidating glare. She sharply informs him that if the thief remains uncaught, she will systematically punish everyone involved, including him. Instead of being terrified, the jester flashes a deeply unhinged smile and completely agrees. He leans dangerously close to her face and proposes a terrifyingly simple solution. They should just murder all the suspects right now. He enthusiastically volunteers to go start the bloodbath immediately. He then tilts his head, noting that her current hesitation is highly unusual. Normally, the queen would be screaming, physically throwing things, and demanding he execute people on the spot. Hearing this, our girl connects the horrifying dots. She realizes the original Lavinia's intense paranoia forced this man to do some absolutely atrocious things. Completely ignoring her internal horror, the jester eagerly grabs her hand and kisses it. He passionately declares he is practically vibrating with excitement to watch her fly into a terrifying rage and casually asks who they should execute first. Realizing his devotion to the queen is basically a full-blown mental illness, our girl firmly shuts him down. She reminds him that the thief's note was a direct insult to the queen herself. She strictly orders him not to lay a single finger on anyone, demanding he just sit quietly and watch her solve the case. The jester looks genuinely shocked by her composed, non-murderous response. He starts casually flicking a lethal little knife around, purring that he is very much looking forward to the show. With a quick flick of his wrist, he performs a magic trick, transforming the deadly blade into a beautiful rose. He hands it to her, softly noting that this feels exactly like the day they first met, though he assumes she has completely forgotten their promise. Our girl mentally short-circuits, having absolutely no idea what promise he is talking about. Before she can ask, he smoothly steps in, plants a kiss right on her cheek, and formally bows. He dramatically declares that watching her shine on stage is his only reason for living. Suddenly, a massive gust of wind sweeps through the room. Our girl blinks, and the jester is suddenly standing dangerously on the edge of the balcony. He calls out that he is really looking forward to her performance before casually throwing himself right off the ledge. She rushes over in a total panic to check where on earth he went, but he has completely vanished into thin air. Left entirely alone, Our girl seriously questions how the original queen survived managing this chaotic walking red flag, concluding that absolutely no one could ever truly control a man like that. Deciding she desperately needs to cool her head, she wanders down the corridor. She mentally pieces together the fragmented clues, the smashed glass, the heavily insulting message card, and the highly convenient dropped items. She realizes the culprit is not even trying to hide. In fact, they are going out of their way to directly provoke her. She severely wonders what their actual endgame is. Her intense brainstorming is violently interrupted by loud shouting. She peeks around the corner and spots suspect number 1 and suspect number 2 aggressively screaming that the entire disaster is the other's fault. Our girl overhears suspect number 2 violently slap suspect number 1 across the face, aggressively screaming that she left all the vault work to her, and this entire disaster is entirely her fault for slacking off. Suspect number 1 trembles and stammers out a pathetic apology. Suddenly, suspect number 3 swoops in to play peacekeeper, telling number 2 to calm down because Colette clearly works very hard. But then she drops a heavily loaded warning, telling Colette not to do anything that will sell the rest of them out. Eavesdropping on this entire mess, our girl mentally roasts the Duke. She deeply questions his definition of strict state control and decides the palace management needs a severe overhaul. Realizing this situation feels significantly less like a high-stakes criminal investigation and way more like a toxic corporate internal audit, she instantly figures out exactly who the real culprit is. She swiftly tracks down the Duke and hands him a very specific background check to complete before the final confrontation. The scene shifts back to the interrogation room, where our girl confidently faces the 3 suspects and the highly entertained jester. Suspect number 2 nervously asks if she actually identified the thief. Our girl confirms she has, but smoothly pivots to the actual motive. She points out that if someone just wanted to steal the treasure, they would have done it cleanly. Instead, the thief went out of their way to leave a highly insulting message meant to force the queen to notice the rotting reality at her feet. Locking eyes with her target, our girl officially names Overseer Colette as the mastermind. The other 2 suspects look like their brains just suffered a catastrophic system failure. Colette tries to play innocent, demanding proof and pointing out that based on the vague alibis and the dropped evidence, any of them could be guilty on paper. Our girl completely shuts down her defense. She explains that while anyone could have theoretically swiped the treasure, the real trick was stealing the planted evidence. Suspect number 2 and 3 instantly realize their earring and pocket watch had mysteriously vanished right before the heist. Our girl turns back to Colette, noting she always keeps her specific pen on her person. Stealing all 3 personal items to plant at the scene required some serious dedication. Internally, our girl had already ordered the Duke to investigate exactly who stole the earring and the watch. She already has rock-solid proof, but gently encourages Colette to turn herself in to earn a lighter sentence. Realizing she is completely cornered, Colette drops the innocent act. She bluntly states there is no way she can talk her way out of this, brutally roasting the other 2 suspects by adding that idiots like them could never pull off a national heist anyway. When suspect number 3 stupidly asks why she would do something so foolish, Colette completely snaps, calling them the absolute fools. Our girl steps in to lay out the real tragedy. Colette knew that stealing a national treasure would inevitably trigger a massive, unavoidable royal investigation. That investigation would legally expose how the other 2 suspects spent all their time slacking off, neglecting their vault duties, and ruthlessly bullying Colette by dumping all the work on her. Colette essentially weaponized the Wicked Queen's terrifying reputation, aiming for absolute mutual destruction. She wanted to drag her toxic co-workers down with her, fully willing to be executed as long as her bullies burned too. The Duke formally declares that stealing national treasure is an unforgivable crime and orders the guards to take her away. But our girl steps directly in front of her. Her past life corporate trauma is violently triggered by the blatant power harassment, completely refusing to let a heavily overworked, highly capable employee go down like this. Flashing a brilliant smile, she casually asks Colette if she is interested in a massive career promotion. Colette looks like she just got hit by a truck, entirely too stunned to speak, so our girl cheerfully answers for her, declaring that she absolutely is. The Duke tries to protest this major HR violation, but our girl aggressively pivots to the 2 bullies. She drops her friendly demeanor and vows to personally and ruthlessly crack down on their slacking and workplace harassment, advising them to thoroughly prepare for their incoming nightmare. The 2 bullies instantly collapse to their knees in absolute terror. The Duke seamlessly switches into intimidation mode, radiating lethal energy as he drags the 2 terrified slackers away for a very intense interrogation. Left completely alone with the jester, he stares at her in absolute awe, praising her for actually solving the case when he never expected her to pull it off. Completely over his dramatic antics, our girl brushes it off, claiming she just got lucky because the culprit was not even trying to hide. The jester flashes a highly suspicious smile, pointing out that the old version of her would have gone completely mad with rage and ordered everyone executed on the spot. Our girl simply states she is not that kind of person anymore. The jester stares at her, dropping his playful act entirely, and softly asks why she went out of her way to protect him. The scene transitions to a flashback of the actual day the jester first tried to assassinate the queen. He is running for his life through the palace, severely battered and bleeding out, while the Duke barks orders at a squad of heavily armed guards to capture and kill the assassin at all costs. Bleeding onto the palace floors, the jester mentally kicks himself. He had originally taken the hit job simply because assassinating a legendary queen sounded incredibly fun, but he now realizes that trying to solo storm a royal castle was a massive tactical error. Just as he accepts that getting cornered like a rat is a highly anticlimactic way to die, the original Lavinia suddenly walks into the corridor, looking absolutely majestic. Believing his luck has completely turned around, he smiles and confirms her identity. When she calmly answers yes, he brandishes his little knife and playfully warns her that walking alone at night is a fantastic way to get attacked by bad men. Lavinia just flashes an insanely confident smile and asks if he is implying he is not one of those bad men. Her complete lack of fear throws him off. But before he can actually attack, the Duke and his guards burst onto the scene. The Duke fiercely orders the assassin to step away from the queen. The jester acts sarcastically confused, heavily implying that given their current distance, he can absolutely sever the queen's neck before the guards can even blink. Deciding he might as well take the monarch down with him, he braces for his final strike. Instead of retreating like the Duke commands, Lavinia actually takes a step forward. Closing the distance herself, she casually demands to know his name. Extremely confused by this sudden, weirdly personal interview, he gives his name as Jack. Lavinia smoothly decides his name is acceptable. The jester playfully points out that he is seconds away from getting violently murdered by her guards, but he smugly notes that dying as the man who assassinated the legendary queen will make him famous forever. Lavinia actually laughs out loud, mocking him for caring so much about what other people think. The jester completely freezes, entirely baffled that this woman is laughing in the face of an armed, bleeding assassin. Lavinia then completely ignores him, casually walking past him and dropping a massive bombshell on the Duke. She loudly declares that she actually really likes this man, orders the Duke to pretend this entire assassination attempt never happened, and demands the assassin's injuries be treated immediately. The Duke looks like he just suffered a massive mental breakdown and tries to protest, but Lavinia shoots him a terrifying glare and asks if he is currently deaf to her orders. The Duke instantly folds, bowing and agreeing to comply. Lavinia casually turns back to the completely stunned jester, tells him he officially works for her now, and wishes him luck enjoying his new life. Back in the present, the jester drops his playful facade and seriously asks our girl why she protected him from the false theft charges. Our girl simply replies that she heard him firmly plead his innocence, and she is not the kind of person to blindly ignore someone begging for their life. The jester breaks into a massive, highly entertained laugh. When she awkwardly asks what is so funny, he notes that she has not changed at all since the day they first met. Deciding to properly pay his debts, he casually pulls out a sealed envelope and hands it over. He explains it contains highly classified intel stolen from a neighboring country, completely with a few extra bonus secrets just for fun. Our girl stares at the envelope, deeply impressed that for someone who constantly acts like a complete clown, he is actually a terrifyingly competent spy. The jester smoothly pivots, complimenting her performance during the interrogation. He affectionately compares her to Elise, the famous palace detective that everyone is currently gossiping about. Hearing that name, our girl's brain immediately connects the dots. Elise is the actual protagonist of this entire novel, a genius civil officer who solves palace mysteries. Our girl realizes that if she can track down the protagonist, Elise might actually be able to solve Lavinia's future murder before it even happens. Before she can fully process this game-changing plan, the jester grabs her hand, passionately kisses it, and dramatically requests they have another delightful time together soon. With a final bow, he completely vanishes into thin air like a literal magician. Our girl shouts for him to wait, desperately needing to ask him more questions, but he is already long gone. She sighs in heavy frustration, realizing she just survived an entire crisis and still failed to secure a single solid clue about her impending death, heavily complaining that every man surrounding Lavinia is selfishly uncooperative. A few days later, our girl is sitting at her desk, confirming the jester's wild backstory with the Duke. She realizes that the original Lavinia was either incredibly broad-minded or just severely reckless to recruit her own assassin. The Duke solemnly confirms the jester's history, noting that the jester's elite intelligence work officially cleared his assassination record, but adding that he personally strongly dislikes the man. Our girl mentally notes that the deeply serious Duke and the chaotic jester are polar opposites. When she asks about the jester's official title, the Duke aggressively sighs and explains the jester literally made up the position just for fun, and the original queen actually signed off on it. Their serious meeting is interrupted when Colette, the actual national treasure thief, walks in carrying a massive stack of paperwork. Our girl had boldly appointed her former criminal as her new personal secretary, realizing that anyone capable of single-handedly managing the vault while possessing the sheer guts to insult the queen directly is basically the ultimate employee. When our girl casually asks where Colette actually hid the stolen national treasure, The Duke shoots Colette an absolutely lethal glare and coldly explains it was found stuffed in a hidden compartment inside her personal bookshelf. Our girl quickly tells the Duke to stop bullying her new secretary. Looking at the incredibly tense dynamic between her deadly knight and her criminal secretary, our girl feels a weird sense of hope. She calculates that if she keeps aggressively recruiting capable allies and systematically knocking out her problems one by one, she might actually survive this novel. She mentally marks the Duke down as a solid ally, before pivoting back to business. She tells Colette to clear her afternoon schedule because they have a very specific project to tackle. The scene shifts to the afternoon, revealing our girl standing in the garden directing four muscular men who are aggressively attempting to scale a massive wall with a heavy rope, looking exactly like they are staging a highly coordinated prison break. Watching four thoroughly exhausted guards aggressively struggle to climb a wall with a simple rope, our girl realizes that a physical security audit is absolutely necessary. To catch Lavinia's future assassin, she desperately needs to figure out exactly how someone could break into her royal bedroom. The guards look like their souls are practically leaving their bodies from the physical exertion, leading her to conclude that forcing non-experts to do extreme parkour is probably a massive human resources violation. Her corporate crisis is interrupted when the jester suddenly pops up right behind her. Peeking over her shoulder, he cheerfully notes that while the climbing exercise looks incredibly fun, it is way too intense for a bunch of amateurs. Without waiting for an invitation, he casually strolls up to the wall and scales the entire thing barehanded, reaching the balcony without breaking a single drop of sweat. Our girl stares at him in absolute awe. Noting that this was not even the real, heavily trapped wall, she instantly informs him that he is officially hired for a very specific job. We jump into a quick flashback where our girl lays out the ultimate security test. She formally orders the jester to break into her actual bedroom. This time, the route is fully armed with deadly, crime-proof security traps, complete with motion sensor arrows that can turn a thrown apple into a shish kebab. The jester whistles, noting the setup sounds incredibly rough and could genuinely end his life. But our girl smoothly hypes him up, insisting that if anyone can survive it, it is definitely him. With his ego thoroughly stroked, he promises to live up to her dangerously high expectations. Back in the present, our girl sits alone in her bedroom. She mentally calculates that the original culprit had to breach the balcony, surviving the deadly traps and scaling the impossible outer wall. Right on cue, the jester casually strolls in from the balcony, proving he flawlessly survived the literal death trap. Our girl instantly bursts into highly satisfied applause. The jester happily soaks in the cheers, proudly declaring that his motto is to always deliver on his promises. Switching back to detective mode, she asks for his professional review of the climbing route. He drops his playful tone and seriously explains that the entry path is incredibly dangerous. Without elite physical skills and a deep, intimate knowledge of the palace layout, breaking in would be completely impossible. Our girl mentally notes that someone with his exact skill set could pull off the murder with terrifying ease. Sensing the shift in her mood, the jester closes the distance between them, leaning in dangerously close to ask why exactly she had him run this elaborate obstacle course. Our girl realizes this is the ultimate test. If he is the true culprit, there is zero chance he would pass up an opportunity like being completely alone with her in a compromised room. Acting on pure adrenaline, she suddenly whips out a dagger, throws herself on top of him, and firmly pins him to the bed. Holding the blade right at his neck, she intensely asks if an intruder could theoretically assassinate her like this. The jester does not even flinch. He casually eyes the blade and notes that while the position is a bit dangerous, taking her life would be incredibly simple for anyone skilled enough to breach the room in the first place. Getting her final confirmation, our girl mentally groans. She realizes she absolutely cannot cross him off her suspect list. Even if he is playing nice right now, he is fully capable of turning her into a past tense at any given moment. She heavily complains internally about how utterly exhausting it is to constantly doubt every single man in her life. The tension totally shifts when the jester calmly asks if she plans on getting off of him anytime soon. She quickly explains the dagger is just a harmless toy, assuring him she would never use a real weapon. The jester smirks, clarifying that he is not worried about the toy knife at all. He smoothly warns her that if she keeps aggressively pinning him down on a bed, there is absolutely no telling what he might do next. Our girl's brain instantly short-circuits. Getting wildly flustered, she scrambles to explain that the situation is a complete misunderstanding, but the jester simply pulls her completely flush against his chest. Radiating pure rom-com energy, he whispers that if this is what she truly wants, he welcomes her advances anytime. Our girl internally screams, realizing this highly romantic development is completely derailing her murder investigation. As they finally start to untangle themselves, he pulls her close one more time, shamelessly demanding a little reward for surviving her deadly obstacle course. Before she can process the flirtation, the door violently flies open. The Duke bursts into the room, instantly taking in the highly compromising scene. Our girl frantically tries to salvage the situation, awkwardly ordering the Duke to wait outside until the room is secure. But the Duke is radiating absolute murderous intent and fiercely orders the jester to step away from the Queen immediately. The jester laughs it off, waving his hands and declaring that he is actually not the bad guy this time. Deciding to evacuate before the Duke actually disconnects his head from his neck, he cheerfully announces his exit. Slipping back out onto the balcony, the jester pauses just long enough to drop one final, massive bombshell. He casually warns our girl that she had better be extremely careful around the Chancellor. As he completely vanishes into the night, our girl is left standing there, severely questioning reality and loudly asking what on earth that is supposed to mean. Our girl stares at the empty balcony, incredibly frustrated, and shouts to the night air, demanding to know what the jester meant by warning her about the Chancellor. The jester's voice echoes back from the darkness, teasingly telling her that she will completely understand once she actually looks into him. With that extremely vague clue, he completely vanishes into thin air. The scene shifts to our girl's office. She sits at her desk, flanked by the Duke and her new secretary Colette. The Duke solemnly hands over a thick file, confirming it is the complete background report she requested on the Chancellor. Our girl thanks him and dives right into the paperwork. The report details Chancellor David Dior's meteoric rise. Born as the second son of a humble shoemaker in the lower town, he was officially a commoner. However, he possessed a terrifying level of natural charisma, successfully launching multiple massive business ventures. After wrapping up his mandatory military service, he pivoted directly into politics, fully backed by several highly powerful patrons. He aggressively pushed popular policies, instantly won over the public, and shattered national records by becoming the youngest chancellor in the country's history at only 22 years old. Reading the report, our girl mentally notes that he is a brutally ambitious workaholic. But the jester's final warning echoes in her mind, heavily urging her to dig deeper. She turns to Colette and explains her current survival strategy. Since half the kingdom is apparently unhappy that she is queen, she desperately needs to systematically figure out who is an actual ally and who is an active threat. She orders Colette to ruthlessly dig into the Chancellor's private schedule and track all of his movements. Later, while walking down the corridor, the Duke notes that the Chancellor has been holding suspiciously frequent meetings with the Western Lords. Colette chimes in, reporting that the Chancellor is officially scheduled to go on a hunting trip with them this coming weekend. Our girl asks for clarification on what a royal hunting trip actually entails. Colette explains it is a highly popular activity among male nobles, where they basically compete over who can kill the biggest animal and violently flatter each other over it. She notes it is entirely a game of networking, hospitality, and enforcing social ranks. Our girl mentally translates this, realizing that a royal hunting trip is basically just a high-stakes, extremely violent version of a corporate golf outing. Deciding she needs to see the Chancellor in his natural political habitat, she figures that letting an ambitious politician run wild without supervision is a terrible idea. She turns to the Duke and casually asks if he happens to be good at hunting. Meanwhile, in his office, the Chancellor practically rolls his eyes at his subordinate, stating he plans to just half-heartedly suffer through the trip. But the subordinate drops a massive bomb, revealing that Her Majesty officially RSVP'd. The Chancellor looks like his brain just suffered a critical system error, loudly asking what she is thinking. A few days later, the hunting trip kicks off. Our girl arrives flawlessly dressed for the occasion alongside the Duke. She immediately spots the Chancellor looking incredibly stressed. Feigning innocence, she casually asks if something is wrong, cheerfully noting it is perfect hunting weather, and he looks entirely too gloomy. The Chancellor quickly recovers, smoothly complimenting her outfit before turning his attention to the Duke. He notes that it is incredibly rare to see the stoic Black Knight at a social hunting event. The Duke flatly responds that he is strictly there to attend to Her Majesty. The Chancellor smirks, noting that the famously emotionless Duke seems to possess a surprising amount of passion when it comes to Lady Lavinia. Internally, the Chancellor is completely spiraling. He watches the Duke gently teach the Queen how to handle a crossbow and admits he has absolutely no idea what she is currently plotting. Trying to insert himself into the narrative, he approaches her and smoothly offers her a pair of hunting gloves. He warns her to be careful, advises her not to stray from the Duke's side, and politely excuses himself to head deeper into the woods. As he walks away, he mentally curses himself, severely questioning why he is awkwardly forcing his goodwill on her. Watching him leave, our girl is equally confused, wondering if his consideration is genuine or if he is currently plotting a massive trap. Her thoughts are interrupted when Marquis Karamari, the man who originally plotted her assassination, approaches. He states he never imagined she would actually join the hunt. Our girl mentally notes that since they are in the West, it makes perfect sense that he is here. The Marquis passionately thanks her, explaining that because of her massive royal support, the Western lands are actually recovering and his stress has drastically decreased. He practically radiates gratitude, vowing that he can never thank her enough. Our girl mentally pats herself on the back, highly satisfied that fixing just one terrible plot point completely changed his character arc suddenly. The Duke loudly clears his throat, awkwardly reminding his brother-in-law that he is also currently standing there. The Marquis nervously greets him, completely deflating from his heroic posture. Deeper in the woods, the Chancellor fires his crossbow at a bird and completely misses. However, the surrounding nobles immediately launch into aggressive flattery, loudly praising his marvelous skill and firmly insisting that his shot was absolutely flawless. The Chancellor internally rolls his eyes, knowing the nobles will just secretly buy a dead bird from the local hunters to cover for his terrible aim anyway. He decides to just enjoy the ego boost. Watching from a distance, our girl completely cringes. Confirming that this entire event is literally just corporate networking with weapons, she realizes his political influence is massive. When the Chancellor suggests they split up for a while, she immediately orders the Duke to secretly track him. As they tail the Chancellor, our girl asks the Marquis why David Dior is so insanely popular. The Marquis explains that the Chancellor is an absolute master at making allies by finding a common enemy. He expertly rallies people together by uniting them in hatred against a single target. Our girl instantly realizes that she, the famously wicked Queen Lavinia, is literally the perfect common enemy. The Marquis grimly confirms this, noting that while the Chancellor climbed to the top using this exact method, he also earned the intense, burning hatred of everyone he stepped on to get there. Before our girl can fully process this, she gets entirely too distracted by the political gossip, violently trips over a rock, and starts falling backward. The Duke instantly catches her with lightning-fast reflexes. He softly asks if she is hurt. When she thanks him and confirms she is fine, he awkwardly looks away, highly blushing as he softly warns her to be careful on the rough terrain. Their weirdly romantic moment is violently shattered by the sound of a terrifying scream echoing through the forest. Our girl completely freezes, demanding to know what just happened. Rushing to the source of the terrifying scream, our girl and the Duke find the Chancellor sprawled on the dirt, currently being hunted by a massive, extremely angry tiger. The Chancellor realizes this is a highly coordinated assassination attempt by a jungle cat. He frantically calculates which of his political rivals set this trap, violently refusing to become exotic cat food in the middle of a networking event. Just as the beast leaps for the killing blow, our girl blindly fires her crossbow. Against all logical odds, the arrow actually hits the target. Her brain practically buffers in shock at her own accuracy. Before the tiger can recover from the sudden piercing, the Duke swoops in and cleanly slices the massive beast into a permanent nap. When the other nobles finally catch up to the scene, our girl instantly launches into a fake applause. She loudly praises the Chancellor's brilliant marksmanship and the Duke's flawless swordplay, completely rewriting history on the spot. The Chancellor shoots her a highly confused look. Leaning in, she quietly explains that being rescued by the famously wicked Queen would completely tank his political reputation. Besides, she severely wants to avoid the spotlight and absolutely loves the idea of him owing her a massive favor. Taking the hint, the Chancellor smoothly accepts the unearned praises from the breathless nobles. The Duke quietly double-checks if she is really okay with handing over the glory. She waves it off and sincerely thanks him for his lethal reflexes. The Duke looks completely blue-screened by her sudden gratitude, awkwardly complimenting her archery skills, while our girl feels both highly validated and deeply unsettled by his intense blushing. Later that night, the palace party is buzzing with the newly fabricated heroic tale of the Chancellor and the Duke. Sipping her drink, our girl internally laughs at the fact that no one would ever suspect the villainess of actually saving the day. She tries to enjoy the peace, but catches several nobles making awkward eye contact and aggressively blushing at her, making her feel highly uncomfortable in her own ballroom. The Chancellor suddenly approaches, pulling her away from the crowd and out onto the balcony, with the Duke silently trailing them like a heavily armed shadow. Our girl severely wonders why the ultimate networking addict is abandoning his own victory party right when he is the hero of the hour. The Chancellor stares at the moon, formally thanking her for saving his life and praising her hidden combat talent. She quickly deflects, insisting it was pure, unadulterated luck. Dropping the small talk, the Chancellor drops a massive political nuke. He reveals that the assassin from her birthday party was hired by none other than Field Marshal Colbert, the Army Supreme Commander. Apparently, the Iron Blood is an aggressive traditionalist who completely despises women in power and firmly believes the throne belongs exclusively to a man. Our girl mentally notes that his medieval misogyny leaves her completely speechless. The Chancellor further explains that the military is desperate to stage a coup, and their golden ticket is Noah, Lavinia's actual younger brother, and one of her top murder suspects. Handing her a sleek black envelope, the Chancellor casually offers his own private intel on the military, heavily suggesting she unleash her chaotic jester to investigate the military's movements. Utterly stunned by this massive handout, our girl accidentally lets her inner monologue slip, bluntly asking what his actual motive is. She quickly braces herself, knowing he never does anything without a selfish agenda. The Chancellor simply admits that he absolutely hates owing people favors because it makes his skin crawl, even though he thoroughly enjoys holding favors over everyone else's heads. Our girl flashes a genuine smile, teasing that this highly manipulative trait is his true nature. He unapologetically agrees, blaming his ruthless survival instincts on his commoner roots. She easily brushes it off, admitting she despises stiff formalities and actually feels incredibly relaxed talking to him without any political filters. The Chancellor looks like his entire worldview just got forcefully rebooted by her genuine warmth. Our girl internally marvels that the ultimate political snake can actually make such a stunned, vulnerable face. His mind flashes back to his impoverished childhood, remembering a moment where he was polishing shoes on the dirt street, watching a young Lavinia ride past in a glittering royal carriage. Back then, he believed she existed in an entirely unreachable universe. Snapping back to the present, our girl suggests they head back inside to the party. Instead of moving aside, the Chancellor steps directly into her personal space, completely blocking her path. As she looks up in utter confusion, he smoothly asks if she would stay out on the balcony with him just a little bit longer, dropping a heavy dose of romance that absolutely nobody saw coming. Our girl demands to know why the Chancellor is suddenly trapping her on the balcony. He smoothly insists he simply wants her to trust him more. Refusing to be charmed, she points out that handing over classified military intel is already a massive down payment for the royal consort position. He openly admits he wants that title more than any man alive, but smoothly pivots, claiming that right now, he is entirely focused on her as a person. Realizing he is expertly controlling the pace of the conversation, our girl mentally hits the brakes. She firmly places a hand flat against his chest to physically stop his advance, bluntly stating she is absolutely not ready to lower her shields around him. Refusing to take the hint, the Chancellor places his own hand over hers, purring that the extreme difficulty of winning her heart only makes him want the spot by her side even more. Before the romantic tension can escalate any further, the Duke materializes out of the shadows. Radiating absolute lethal energy, he aggressively grabs the Chancellor's hand and issues a highly threatening warning to step away from the Queen. The Chancellor glares right back, mockingly calling the Duke a dog and questioning his rude interruption. Unfazed, the Duke states he is strictly enforcing Her Majesty's clear rejection. The two men lock eyes in a fierce, glittering standoff. Deciding to retreat, the Chancellor blames his bold behavior on the wine, dramatically bows, and asks our girl not to forget his passionate confession before strutting away. Our girl mentally reboots, deeply relieved the crisis is over. She sincerely thanks the Duke for his highly reassuring presence and for saving her from becoming exotic cat food earlier. The Duke immediately downplays his heroics, insisting it is his literal job description. He smoothly flips the gratitude, passionately thanking her for showing his sister and brother-in-law mercy, admitting he shudders to think what would have happened to his family without her compassion. Capitalizing on the peaceful moment, our girl asks how he learned to expertly slice up massive jungle beasts. The Duke dives into his backstory, revealing his family is famous for extreme martial arts. While his father was a gentle soul, his mother ruthlessly drilled combat skills into him and his sister from a young age. Inheriting the title of Duke at just 14, he basically lived on brutal battlefields until Her Majesty officially appointed him as her captain of the guard. Gently tracing his infamous little dagger, he vulnerably admits that fighting is the only thing he knows, which is exactly why he desperately wants his sister to live a happy, peaceful life in his place. Hearing this deeply emotional confession, our girl is completely touched. She realizes he is actually a massively devoted, family-minded older brother. Mentally recalculating her survival odds, she notes that since she actively saved his family instead of executing them, his canonical murder motive is entirely deleted. Without a trace of murderous intent in his eyes, she happily concludes his threat level has completely plummeted. Meanwhile, back inside the glittering ballroom, the Chancellor is casually sipping a drink with his blonde lackey. Radiating pure, unadulterated arrogance, he orders his subordinate to officially proceed with their secret plan. He remains absolutely convinced that he is the ultimate candidate for royal consort and that Lavinia will inevitably choose him. Out on the balcony, the Duke completely ruins the romantic mood by issuing a stern warning. He firmly advises against trusting the Chancellor, pointing out the man has deep ties to the military and likely would have hidden the assassin intel entirely if she had not saved his life earlier. Our girl completely agrees. She mentally calculates that the Chancellor was definitely just weighing whether the Queen or the army was the better political investment. Knowing everyone is violently eager to end her life, she vows to ruthlessly investigate every single suspect. Despite her bold words, a wave of deep paranoia hits her. She genuinely wants to rely on her highly capable knight, but her lingering corporate trauma makes her terrified of suffering yet another ultimate betrayal. The Duke instantly senses her emotional shift and asks if she is okay. She awkwardly blames the sudden chill in the air, but the Duke sees right through the lie. He bluntly states that she still does not completely trust him, casually adding that he absolutely does not mind. Before she can scramble for an excuse, the Duke suddenly whips out his infamous dagger. Our girl's heart practically stops, utterly terrified he is about to fulfill his assassin destiny. Instead, the Duke flips the blade and points it directly at his own chest. Staring intensely into her eyes, he fiercely declares that his life belongs entirely to her, and he is fully prepared to prove it. The Duke dramatically points his infamous little dagger directly at his own chest, fully prepared to forcefully cancel his own subscription to Life if he ever betrays her trust. Our girl completely panics and physically stops him, deeply confused as to why he would jump straight to self-elimination. Staring at her with absolute devotion, the Duke explains that if he cannot protect her life, his own existence is entirely pointless. Our girl internally questions if earning her trust is really worth dying for, still baffled by his intense loyalty despite saving his family. Gazing at his blade, the Duke's mind flashes back to the day the original Lavinia recruited him. She had completely ignored the terrifying rumors about him, instead praising his fighting style as a single, beautifully deadly blade, and officially claiming him as her sword. Snapping back to the present, he drops to one knee, desperately begging to swear his entire life to her once more. Our girl wonders if he actually grasps the massive weight of dedicating his entire existence to her. Deciding to fully lean into his loyalty, she places her hand over his on the dagger handle. She officially acknowledges him as her knight, internally hoping that even if her villainous death is hard-coded into the universe, he will at least stay by her side. She hands the dagger back, firmly deciding to cross him off her suspect list for now. Later that evening, our girl is lying in bed, mentally reviewing the chaotic tiger assassination attempt. She realizes that letting the Chancellor become exotic cat food might have severely lowered her chances of getting murdered later, but she simply could not ignore the terrified look on his face. Spiraling over her awful survival options, she vows to hunt down her true killer before drifting off to sleep. Suddenly, her soul practically leaves her body, and she finds herself floating like a ghost inside Lavinia's bedroom. She realizes this is a futuristic vision of the exact crime scene right after the Queen's murder. The Chancellor, the Duke, and a terrified maid are standing over the aftermath. The Chancellor coldly points out that the murder weapon is undeniably the Duke's personalized dagger. The Duke completely freezes in absolute shock. As he furiously tries to lunge forward, the royal guards instantly block him. The Chancellor ruthlessly warns him that they are both prime suspects and aggressively advises him to stop acting so incredibly guilty. Before the Duke can explode, a blonde woman steps into the room. It is Elise, the novel's brilliant detective protagonist. She calmly tells the Duke to stand down, confidently promising to uncover the true culprit. Our girl abruptly wakes up, her entire body feeling like it was run over by a heavy carriage thanks to the intense prophetic dream. Before she can even process the trauma, she hears aggressive shouting outside. Following the noise, she spots the blonde detective from her dream dropping absolute truth bombs on a crowd. Channeling pure genius energy, Elise drops her famous catchphrase about eliminating the impossible before entirely dismantling a sweaty Viscount's alibi. She flawlessly explains how he shot a beast with a stimulant-laced rifle bullet to trigger a frenzy, and then dramatically sliced his own arm with a knife to play the innocent victim. The Chancellor steps up, inspecting the Viscount's arm and confirming it is a clean blade cut, not a jagged animal scratch. Realizing he is completely cornered, the Viscount instantly folds, dropping to his knees and crying that he was just following orders. Our girl watches the heroine brutally and mercilessly solve the case, exactly like she was described in the novel. She calculates that making friends with the genius protagonist is the ultimate survival cheat code. Stepping into the spotlight, our girl gracefully praises Elisa's flawless deduction. Flashing her most charming smile, she casually invites the detective to a private tea party. Elisa's brain practically short-circuits, completely baffled and terrified that the kingdom's famously wicked queen just casually asked her on a friend date. Fast forward to the tea party, where our girl is waiting at a meticulously arranged table in a massive garden. The blonde detective, Elise, arrives looking entirely out of her element. Our girl warmly welcomes her, gesturing to a table completely overflowing with cakes, pastries, and high-end tea. Elise looks completely shocked by the extravagant spread. Our girl casually tells her to help herself to whatever she likes, mentally patting herself on the back. She remembers from the novel that Elise has a massive sweet tooth, and calculates that if she can bribe the genius detective with enough sugar, she might actually borrow her deductive reasoning skills to avoid a premature death. Elise takes a polite bite before immediately dropping her detective skills on the table. She bluntly asks if Her Majesty summoned her to consult on a specific case, noting the highly suspicious number of incidents surrounding the Queen lately. Our girl's brain practically stutters. She realizes that trying to casually bribe the greatest detective in the kingdom with cake was incredibly naive. Deciding to just go for it, she casually drops a hypothetical scenario. If a woman is surrounded by 5 men, and one of them is secretly plotting her murder, how exactly would someone go about unmasking him? Elise blinks in surprise at the highly specific and terrifying hypothetical, but immediately shifts into detective mode. She explains that if the murder has not happened yet, you desperately need to find clear, undeniable signs of murderous intent. Our girl agrees, noting that any decent assassin would actively hide their intent. Elise nods, explaining that taking a life puts a massive psychological strain on the human heart. Normally, people live with heavy chains holding back that dark urge. However, when a specific trigger snaps those chains, the culprit crosses the line into murder. Elise calmly adds that there are terrifying exceptions, specifically, people who never had those chains to begin with. Hearing that, Our girl's brain immediately flashes an image of the highly unhinged jester. As for the Duke, she genuinely believes he will not betray her, but acknowledges he is absolutely merciless toward his enemies. She sincerely thanks Elise for the terrifyingly accurate psychological profile. Elise brightens up, completely thrilled to have helped. Our girl smiles, promising to return the favor if Elise ever needs anything. Taking the offer immediately, Elise blushes deeply and nervously asks Her Majesty for romantic advice, specifically asking how to get closer to a man she likes. Our girl mentally squeals, immediately knowing exactly who she is talking about. It is Duke William Alfred, the official male lead of the novel, the powerful noble who constantly protects Elise from palace bullies and supports her detective work. The slow burn, unspoken romance between them kept the novel's readers completely on the edge of their seats. Elise nervously explains that the man has a significantly higher status than her, and she constantly worries that she is just bothering him. Our girl mentally contrasts Elise's incredibly wholesome, peaceful romance problem with her own daily struggle to avoid getting stabbed. Channeling her inner romantic guru, she gently advises Elise that while considering status is important, her own feelings are what truly matter. She warmly encourages the detective to treasure her emotions so that when the perfect chance arrives, she can confidently confess. Elise lights up like a Christmas tree, practically vibrating with happiness. She earnestly thanks the Queen, declaring she feels completely re-energized. Our girl mentally restrains herself, desperately wanting to drop a dozen spoilers from her novel knowledge to speedrun their romance, but firmly decides to hold back. Just as Elise nervously stammers that the Duke is a wonderful man, the actual Duke Claude materializes out of thin air right behind her, radiating his usual intense, intimidating energy. Elise practically jumps out of her skin in sheer terror, frantically apologizing for staying too long before violently bowing and sprinting away from the terrifying knight. Our girl completely ignores her panicked exit, warmly thanking Claude for bringing her the requested documents and praising him for always being so helpful. Claude quietly confirms the delivery, but as our girl mentally celebrates successfully befriending the protagonist, Claude abruptly speaks up. He flatly states that he is also a duke. Our girl blanks, letting out a highly confused noise. Claude awkwardly mutters that the Duke who serves Her Majesty is, before abruptly cutting himself off and looking away, highly embarrassed. Our girl severely questions why her fiercely lethal knight is suddenly sulking over another man's title, but her train of thought immediately derails. Connecting the dots, she realizes that if Elise is actively seeking romantic advice, the male lead, Duke William Alfred, should be making his grand entrance into the plot any second now. Her internal warning sirens instantly start blaring at maximum volume, convinced a massive disaster is approaching. A while later, a teacup violently shatters on the floor. Someone screams in absolute terror that Duke William Alfred has just collapsed, while Noah, the Queen's famously exiled younger brother, screams the Duke's name in pure